I'd like to talk about loafing, lummelen, and why loafing is essential. I'd like to start by asking, is somebody here a loafer? Who does see himself as a loafer, een lummelaar, Lazzarone, tagesdiep? I don't know what a loafer is in French. I should have looked that up. Maybe somebody knows. Troubadour. A true loafer like me, once an evolutionary biologist and now a writer, has a real problem giving a talk in English to a Dutch audience. Actually, it's only now, since my father passed away, that I've been able to come out as a loafer. His way of giving someone a compliment was to say they'd worked themselves to death. That was his loftiest ambition. But that aside, it's my conviction that loafing is not what it seems. Contrary to public opinion, it has great value. Neither we nor animals do without it, and I'll try to tell you why. Nearly all organisms on Earth, including humans, have an internal clock, and this determines what's called the circadian rhythm. In people, periods of useful activity alternate regularly with sleep, but a rest period remains, and that's called free time. And you'd think that this concept was only relevant to humans because it probably comes from the relatively new world of regulated working hours and collective labor agreements. Free time is meant to give paid slaves or even unpaid slaves time to physically recover. But the question remains whether there's such a thing as free time for animals in nature. Take horses, for example. A few years ago, I gave a party in a room on the first floor of the riding school on the Vondelpark in Amsterdam. And at one point that evening, I walked over to the balcony and looked down in the riding pit below. And there, a few riderless horses were trotting around in all directions. Some rolled in the sand before jumping up again and then colliding with a fellow horse before taking off again. You got the impression they were thoroughly enjoying themselves, as if they'd been given a 15-minute horse break. You could say riding school horses are paid slaves, like people bound to fixed times for working, eating, and sleeping, because after a long day of endlessly walking in circles and making figure eights, they are allowed to do for a while whatever they like, play, roll around, and run. And after that, they are led to their stalls for the night. So the horses are given time off by their human masters. And you could even call that free time, but of course it's domesticated animals that we are talking about here, and not wild horses. So in fact, this example says very little about the presence of the existence of free time for wild animals. Not so long ago, a friend of mine told me that for the past few years he had worked like an animal. Ik heb gewerkt als een beest, as we call it in Dutch. And I wondered what kind of animal he was talking about. It couldn't have been a South American sloth, a luiaard, because, as you know, they take things easy. If they move at all, they do it at a snail's pace, and the tree leaves they live off generate very little energy, and this is why they spend most of the time hanging upside down, motionless from a tree branch. I don't think my friend was referring to the felines, members of the cat family either, because they spend most of their day dozing off or sleeping. Take, for example, cheetahs on the East African savanna. They are only active for a very short period of the 24-hour day. They'll chase a gazelle at an incredible speed, and if the hunt is successful, they'll spend most of the rest of the day sleeping, dozing, lounging around in the shade. Animals that feel safe and have enough food to eat will often relax by playing, and dolphins look like they enjoy themselves when they blow bubble rings, like these dolphins here. And Russian crows seem to be big fans of snowboarding. In biological terms, we say that being functionally busy and having fun can often be easily combined. People who cycle or ski are enjoying themselves while practicing all kinds of useful skills and staying in good condition at the same time. What is striking is how differently the many species of animals spend their free time. Compare the behavior of lightning-fast swifts who seem to perform their acrobatic stunts just for the fun of it with that of wood pigeons. Wood pigeons are masters of doing nothing. They'll sometimes sit huddled on a tree branch for hours on end, nothing less than a feathered void, total zen. In his essay, The Fallacy of Misplaced Concreteness, the Dutch writer Rudy Kousbroek, I think he's the best Dutch essay writer from the last century, describes the brain as an organ that must always be kept busy. If only you could stop it, so that all kinds of often bad childhood memories didn't keep popping up uninvited. Unfortunately, that's not possible. Kousbroek said the brain deviated in this respect from almost all other principles in nature, because nature, as he wrote it, seeks to be busy as little as possible, and all of its activity can be seen as an attempt to return to a state of rest. While it's clear that many animals do work hard at times, a lot of time is also wasted. But can animals waste time without paying a price? Wouldn't those members of the species with the genetic tendency to work harder be able to expand more easily in the population at the expense of the loafers, the lummelaars, the lazzarone? You'd think evolutionary biologists would get confused by all this apparently unproductive time. Is it really true that animals do everything within their power to spread their genes as efficiently as possible? Chronobiologist, that's an expert in circadian rhythm, Serge Daan and his colleagues from the University of Groningen, a town in the Netherlands, spent more than 10 years experimentally trying to unravel that mystery. First, they ringed nearly all of the kestrels, torenvalken, at a lake in the northern Netherlands, and kestrels breed there in nesting boxes that are installed by the biologists. Then they manipulated the number of eggs in the nest of the kestrels, or clutches, the clutch size, as biologists call that. When they removed eggs, this improved the male's chances of survival. The males mainly hunt for prey for the young, but they produced fewer young. When they added eggs to the clutch, they discovered that the males worked a lot harder, but that this also reduced their chances of survival during the following season. In other words, making the maximum effort is not the answer at all to all ills, or to put it differently, and that's important for me because I'm a loafer, loafing is essential. So thanks to Daan's excellent research, the Darwinists can sleep well again, and every sloth can take comfort in knowing that his time will still come. To return to the main question, do animals have free time? Cheetahs laze about endlessly, and kestrels seem to spend a large part of their day doing nothing. A kestrel will sit on a pole for a long time, digesting its food, occasionally closing its eyes, dozing away, and then starting to preen its feathers. Then it will sit motionless and gaze out over the field again, calmly scanning it for the presence of prey. Dozing, preening feathers, gazing. You could wonder if the kestrel is strategically loafing away its time to prevent its life expectancy from falling. As it turns out, that may be only part of the story. Aside from urgent activities like hunting, there are less urgent activities like this contemplative pole sitting. Gazing out over a flat terrain appears to be a passive activity, as if the kestrel is resting, but in fact it's probably gathering information. However, unconsciously, it's weighing things up. I'll go hunt there, but not there. Just like preening feathers, sitting and gazing into space may also be a useful activity. The concept of free time in nature thus becomes more unlikely than ever. The Dutch poet Judith Hertzberg once said, "You have to waste a lot of time before you can write a poem." And that's how I see it too, and that's why I advocate pole sitting. Whenever I decide to write an essay or a story, a gathering phase begins. I observe things around me more closely. I start searching for information. I immerse myself in the literature and discuss things with other people. I postpone writing, and I'm on the lookout for unexpected links, for questions that lend themselves for use in an essay. The kestrel does something similar in the mice department. It delays hunting, but is still busy preparing for it, like the cheetah, who lazily keeps a close eye on the savanna from a higher vantage point. Just as working too hard has a negative effect on the kestrel's life expectancy, so hunting for too long is risky for the cheetah. It can become overheated and even suffer from brain damage. It therefore wastes a large part of its day, and it's a good thing it does. In conclusion, it's fair to say that free time for animals is free time in name only. In fact, it's even better if they don't work harder than they do. And on closer observation, their apparent idleness often turns out to be functional. Free time in unfree nature doesn't really exist. There are even strong signs that the sloth, the loafer, the lummelaar, and the idler have the right to exist, and that they are probably using most of their time very efficiently. And what this also means is that all the loafers, the lummelaars, the lazzarone, the tagesdiebe among us here today can now thoroughly relax, because we are undoubtedly doing something very useful. Thank you.